Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap-up presented by the Gokhstein News Network. I'm your host, Landy. Today is September 12th, 2025. We're going to look at Bitcoin, of course, here on the daily. We'll check in on the weekly, and we will also check in on ETH and Sol. Now, Bitcoin has made the move to the overhead resistance, the primary overhead resistance that I talked about on Wednesday and Monday before it. After we had a nice little bit of a trend change and a trend break, I should say, off of the trend reversal setup on the daily here. And that is what we need to pay attention to on the daily at that 1,110 essentially. Now, I do know it is, of course, here on spot 109,993. It's basically 110. So that is the area to watch to the downside, as Bitcoin is in the thick of the overhead resistance now and essentially needs to trade above the last rejection here. Now, I do have a bit of a different chart that I've been showing you based on the move up, but I wanted to simplify it just to kind of illustrate a point here. The last time that Bitcoin did come down and hit 112, we saw it, pop back up to a new all-time high, came down, sat on 112 again, then popped right back up to the tighter range here. And it did hit the low close of this tighter range. Now I have my resistance overhead there a little bit higher at 117,800 or so. And in this case, when it did pop up, it didn't quite beat that. That's what I wanted to see a close above, was essentially the high, the bearish candle that set the high at 123 over here. And after it bounced the second time, it went right into the bottom side closing structure there, where there was also a swing, a swing of that structure and another close open just above it, while Bitcoin consolidated before hitting 112. So this is going to be a pretty important inflection point for overhead resistance if the bulls can recover and close above here. Now, granted, this is at 117,300. I still, in my opinion, I need to see closes above 118 to then go and hit the top side of the tighter range over here, about 120 to 121. And that's really where things kind of change. Shorts have cover until about the highs up here at 121. Closes above there are going to get moves back to 123 to 125, as I'd mentioned on Friday. I'm sorry, today's Friday, on Wednesday. So, it's one of those situations where it's, headed into a weekend, much like what we saw back here on a Friday. This was Friday, August 22nd, the last time that Bitcoin traded up here. We saw, we saw a rejection from there and some lower lows. Now, granted, that was in the context of a downtrend, and we do have a different trending structure now. We do have a higher low and higher highs. So it's really all about watching how Bitcoin acts around this overhead resistance here. And then the next potential higher low that could come in, as long as it is a higher low or equal low relative to the 110 region. Now, this is going to be important because this is going to come up again on the weekly. And that is going to be right around the close open. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick here. On the weekly, we essentially have 110 as the region to pay attention to. Now, granted, this basis band is sitting at right around 110,200, and anywhere below there, then this potential higher low swing, which is solidified, and we need to see the weekly come in and close above around 113.5, right here at the close open of the bearish candle that headed down and hit that big daily level at 107, 108, and we need to see closes above that weekly at 113.5. That would set another higher low relative to the last higher low at 101, with the swing coming in right around 98,200. And in this case, that's the area, 110 on the daily would be the weekly basis banner just right around it. Now, granted, this will update and potentially push up to to the 110 and a half, 111 area, potentially more, towards 112. But the warning would be, a breaking of that reversal setup at 110. And that would be an inflection point or below an inflection point on the weekly, which would be the basis band. And then we'd have to watch the last higher low on a swing. And of course, if it does close above 113, this would be a last higher low and a close, with the close coming in at 108.250 and the swing coming in right there at 107.250. So this is the time to pay attention to Bitcoin on the longer term timeframes as we head into a very important week next week with the FOMC meeting and the market already pricing in a 25 basis point cut, which, as I mentioned on Wednesday, I think is about an 80% likelihood, maybe 75% likelihood to 80% likelihood. And I think that based on some of the employment data that has been revised from last year, and then some of the trending employment data for this year, it is a higher likelihood that the Fed might weigh the importance of that more closely than some of the inflationary data that's coming in, or inflation data that's coming in rather. And as it did come in line essentially this week, the headline numbers came in line. So we'll see what their decision is next week, but this is going to be very important to watch structure as we are going from an expansion to a compression. You can see that Bitcoin has tagged the upper first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here, just shy of 117 at that 116.885. Now the current high is coming in just a little under there at 116.833. So what am I watching for? This weekend closes above 113.5. That would set the higher low. And then it's watching that daily at essentially 110. Anywhere below there, danger for this weekly closing structure, especially if it sets the closing structure as another higher low. And at this particular moment, Bitcoin is pushing right into an area of resistance on the daily. So let's go ahead and actually turn this off and give some context with the chart that I typically show here. And that is our local support and resistance areas of interest. You can see that this zone has been recovered on a closing basis. And this is the swing low here at 117.800 essentially. And it wasn't until we got the close open, like right on it, that pushed down to the next big weekly level at 112 to 109, with that daily level in between at 110 not getting hit until after the new all-time high. So I had a nice bounce off the lower Bollinger Band, set the prior weekly area at 112 on the high, and then working its way down, try to hold the 118 level, dumping down to the 112 again, bouncing up, finding resistance, hitting some of the dailies inside the weekly, and then coming down for the daily sweep where that move originated from to set new all-time highs above 112. So we've gotten all the important levels tested. The bulls need to start closing above about 118. Then we can start looking to the next big area that would act as resistance around 120 to 121. And only on closes above there do I think the bulls have a chance of getting the shorts to capitulate and dump their positions. So I do think they have cover until closes above there. And, just watching intra-week, intra-day for movements up into that area, if we do start to see closes above 118, is what I'm going to be watching next to see the reaction from the short side of the positions in the market right now. And, big week. If the Fed holds, or if they cut larger than 25 basis points, I think that's going to lead to a big volatile move in the markets. And I don't necessarily think, and we can look at position as we get closer to that meeting on Wednesday next week. So on Monday, I'll update you, but on Wednesday and then after Wednesday, I'll be taking a look at where Bitcoin is in terms of support and resistance areas of interest. If the news does come in as kind of an unexpected bit of news with either a hold or a 50 basis point. And I know that you're hearing stuff out there about a 50 basis point. The market isn't pricing that in. So there would be quite a repositioning event going on. And in my personal opinion and experience, that's usually leads to downside price action. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's prolonged. So we'll just have to wait and see. Criteria is pretty clear for Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and check on Ethereum and Solana. I know Solana's had a good day. I've had some really good trades on it off of some key levels. And Ethereum also making some progress. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And it's going to be over here. So Ethereum finally getting that, getting out of that tighter range off of the low side structure here. Nice consolidation and push right back into overhead resistance here. Moving from that expansion into compression here, getting a close above the upper second standard deviation and essentially the 46 to 46.30 level. That's what we needed to see. And we finally started to get that on the lower term timeframes, closes rather above 4,500. So next big challenge for the bulls on Ethereum is to get above the prior highs, the prior all-time high in this case at 48.67, 48.70 area, start to push the $49.55 to $5,000. That would also meet the criteria on a closing basis to get and maintain above the upper second, hit expansion on closes above overhead resistance. Then I'd be looking 5,500 to 6K, and then eventually up here to the 1.168 or 16.8% above the prior cycle high, which is right around 6,500, swings above to 66, possibly even 67, fair game if it does start to expand up this way for Ethereum. And of course, if it hits full expansion and really goes for it above there, then we can start looking to 75, 7,500, and potentially even up just shy of $8,000. And maybe even just, $7,500 to $8,000 by the 1,272 would be fair game on a close and swing. As the 1,272 extension is right there at 75,750 or so. Now, that also means that if you see Bitcoin trading below 4,600, be aware of the downside back to support right here at about 4,400 or so by the basis band. Anywhere below there, this consolidation structure lows are in play again around the lower first on the daily, and that's around the 4,200. If that is dropped, we're looking back down to 41, 41.50 and possibly down to 4K by the 888 again. But I still believe Ethereum is sitting in a good position and on closes on the daily anywhere above around 3,900. So looking good for Ethereum here. Potential for it to start hitting expansion. But again, this is a Friday. It's right at resistance. Bitcoin's at resistance. And we'll have to see if we get some interesting price action over the weekend heading into some of the major events of next week for of course, FOMC. And when looking at Solana, it has now made up some ground. It did fulfill some of our shorter term targets before a major one overhead. So on Wednesday, I did speak about, above 430, we could start looking 440, 445. We got a move up to essentially, 240 to 245. My apologies. On expansion. And the next area overhead is going to be around 250 to 255 by the upper third standard deviation. If we do see a recovery above here, I wouldn't, it could start to play up into the 270, 280 region, but be aware of corrections back down. As long as it's trading above 225, the upper first standard deviation here on the daily, it's looking pretty good on expansion to continue to test the high side structures. Anywhere below there, we're looking right back to around the 210 region. Now, of course, you could take, essentially 218 to 220 to 210 as a range, as there is some high side structure in there. But it would really be eyes on that 210 region where the basis band is currently coming in. Anywhere below there, the last higher low is in play around $200. And realistically, right now, as structure currently stands, until we see a high put in and another potential higher low, the higher low to watch is $200. So it's in a really good position right now to try and head up towards that 250, 255 initially, and then kind of come back to it later. There are some interesting targets above there on the daily around the 265, 270 region on the daily inside of that big weekly zone up there. So looks positive. Again, it's a Friday coming into a weekend ahead of a major economic event. So, just be nimble. And, I've been nimble in terms of my trading off of the low side structures and some of my swings for longs. I was hedging, last week. And this week I've kind of been hands off with all of the data coming into the end of the week and just kind of playing scalps on things here and there. So be willing to be nimble and watch Bitcoin very closely. The better that it performs to the upside, and if it can get above some of the key areas of resistance, specifically 218, and start working its way to the next resistance at 118 rather. Jeez, having a tough day today. 118 to 120. And 121 being the next big area of resistance. That's really what we're going to have to watch. And where Bitcoin goes in this regard in terms of price action, I think that we will see others follow. And looks good right now for the bulls, but we'll have to see what the weekend comes with the weekend closes, and then of course what comes into the early part of next week for setups. And I'm going to leave you with that. I know it seems a little bit, is he being indecisive? No, we're right up against resistances. Ethereum's right in resistance as well. And there's still a very significant overhead of level of resistance for Solana. So it does pay to just pay very close attention to what's going on in the market in terms of price action as we head into these major events, and be willing to adjust positions accordingly. And have some fun. I mean, it's especially if you're willing to. I know many of you don't short, but if you're out there trading, it's been fun. We've been having some fun. It's been nice and volatile. So I don't expect that to cool down. By the way, post FOMC, I expect some more volatility, but we'll see how it goes. I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. Go ahead and like and share this out there, and have a great weekend. I'll talk to you again on Monday. Landy out.